Anything else? Yeah.
I just want to tell you that I love the show, and I was so happy that you guys got picked up.
Thank
I had to
you.
know what happened with Buzz
Thank you.
it was really fun. My question was, as a writer, what is the difference between being a writer on staff, and running a show?
It is completely different. Being a writer on staff is like so great. Like it's like so fun, and it's like you go in at 10, and if you're lucky, you like leave at 6, and maybe you think a little at night. Like it's so great. It's like the best job ever. I highly recommend it. Running a show is completely different. It's like amazing and it's fulfilling, but it's just all encompassing. Like it's the only, like, I can't imagine if there was anything else in my life that required care that I had to deal with, because I don't think I would be able to do it. Like all my plants are dead. Like thank God I don't have pets or children. Like I can't.
But I will say, like, having worked on other shows, Liz is much more involved, like in terms of cast and in terms of like what's going on with like the actors on set. She's like much more involved than others, like showrunners that I've worked with. Like for each episode, for myself, the character that plays Baze and Lux, she writes us all tone notes for each scene, because we shoot in Vancouver and she's in LA. So we get like 5 or 6 pages per episode of notes, like this is what's happening in this scene. When you're feeling this, you want to make sure you hit this mark and hit this. And if they're gonna block it this way, make sure that you can get them to remember this. Or the other day I was like looking over the tone notes, I was like, Gary, you gotta make sure that we shoot the ending 2 different ways. So she's definitely going like above and beyond what other showrunners have done, but I think is why the show is such a cohesive unit. And I think in terms of being an actor on a show, it really comes from the top. And so like, our show is very like healthy, like relationships between people on set is very healthy. And so I just think that comes from Liz and the way the show is being run. I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, it's a good. I mean, it's hard because a lot of times you're on shows that shoot. My first job was on Dawson's, and they shot in North Carolina, versus being on something, American Dreams or Brothers and Sisters that shoots in LA. You get to have such an instant camaraderie with the cast, and I think that without a doubt, like there always is kind of it's not even love-hate. I think it just becomes hate between production and the writers, and obviously cast is with production, because the writers are like sitting in their office, they're like, exterior night, it's raining. You know what I mean? Storm. And it's like, we can write anything, and we are not the ones, I mean, one writer per episode will be, but we're not the ones who are there at 4 in the morning, freezing cold in Vancouver. And so there is a natural, and I guess animosity, like things kind of build up, and so I think what was really important to me, and I think it's been important to the cast as well, is to really, that's what's been so great about our cast, is we have a writer go up for each episode in order to, it's not about like how the scene is shot and the blocking and everything, it's literally about what Sherry was talking about, the tone of each scene, and to make sure that each, beat or turn for the character, each moment has been captured on film or video in our case. So it's so great because the writers go up and like all the actors just completely embrace them and like take them out and hang out with them and make them feel at home, and it just, I don't know, it's definitely the show that I've been on that's been the most kind of the best relationship between the writers and actors, and I think that it makes a huge difference. I mean, for me, obviously, like having a great relationship with Sherry and being able, we spent a lot of time in New York together over hiatus, and we were like, we're on a break from the show, like, we're not going to talk about the show. Yeah, they were like, so what do we think? We're like, we don't need to talk about the show. We just won't think about it. We don't know it's coming back. And we're like, but if it did come back, what would happen? And it was like, I mean, literally, one of the things that we're doing is stuff that like we sat, in like Central Park and talked about or whatever. So it's just been fun. It's fun to collaborate, and even last weekend, Sherry came back into town, and it was like, we just started talking about her character, and I had been trying to get something to click in my mind, but it hadn't really gelled yet, and she had done all this work, and it was like all of a sudden I just felt like the 5 episodes just laid out for me and kind of made sense based on what she was saying. So it's just really fun to have that collaboration, and it's not even that we have to agree all the time. It's just more that it's always like kind of an open dialogue about, because I always think a character is made up of it's half of the writer and half of the actor, and that's who together makes the character. So it's important that we have good communication about that. Are there other questions? Yeah.
You talked a little bit about the writers on the show. Can you talk about how the group that's writing on the show came together, how you compiled them, what you were looking for with
Yeah.
each of the writers?
Mostly I was looking for like cool people to sit in a room with, because like once you've read their stuff, it's like you meet them to see like, okay, now can I spend 10 hours a day? It's basically like, would I invite these people to Thanksgiving every day for the next 5 years? Like that's pretty much like what you're putting together. But I think it's different things. Like you want people with different skill sets, because not every single person is going to be good at everything. You can't expect that. So I think you want to be able to balance your room. For instance, the first person I read was this writer, Adele Lynn, who, when I read her script, I wished I had been talented enough to write it, but I also felt like, oh my God, like our voices are so close to each other. And I kind of wish my voice was like her voice. And so I knew I wanted her from her writing. And then she came in and she had a million ideas and was enthusiastic, and I could tell, you know, she would be a real leader in the room, and she leads our room. Deirdre Shaw, who's where? Yes, she's a writer on staff. She was up here for the book panel, and she's Jay's wife, other half. And we'd worked together on American Dreams, and I knew that Deirdre was like amazing with character. Like I just knew that she, more than anybody, which is what her role is on the show, is that she's able to kind of delve into like not only what would a real person do, but like what would these people do, and what's really natural. And I think because she comes at it from a fiction background, and that her experience isn't only TV, she brings a whole other dimension to the character. She was out writing last week, and like when she's gone, I can feel the whole room shifting, because I mean, all of a sudden we were like, wait a minute, a real person wouldn't do that. Like that would be a real person's response, and I'm like, Deirdre, where is she? You know, so it's like it's like you're piecing together a puzzle, and you don't want like, I mean, obviously in a perfect world you'd love everyone to be great at everything, but it's like that's not even realistic. Just like I'm not great at everything, so you really want people who are going to complement each other. For the great draft writer, you want somebody who's going to really understand story and structure. And for that person, you're going to want somebody who's not so worried about the story, but's worried about character. And, you know, you kind of are putting that all together. You know, you don't want somebody, you want people who are able to listen to other people's ideas. You don't just smack down people's ideas, because in a writer's room, I mean, you always have to be able to be like, okay, this is like, if we were going to do the worst version ever of what you're saying, this would be it. And then usually you're like, so, you know, I don't know, you come up with some horrible thing, and then you're like, okay, not that. But, I mean, like, we were just doing an episode the other day, and I said something like, but what if they were just all at the same place? I won't like give it away, not that anybody cares. But I was like, but what if they did all just show up at the same place? And everyone was like, ha 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 ha, that's like so bad. And then I was like, all day I was just like, oh, I was like sweaty, and I'm like, I don't know. I was like, I don't know. And then finally the other day I was like, I think they have to all be at the same place. I was like, I'm sorry. I know it sounds like a bad version, but it's so much more fun. And it's like, it's like you make certain leaps, because that's a story you want to see. You actually don't want to be like, well, of course they wouldn't go to the same place, because that's so coincidental. So then all our characters are together. You want to be like, yeah.
Like, where are we going? Girls here.
And it's definitely like always that kind of negotiation where you have to kind of be free to say the bad version. And it's hard. I mean, it's working on a project with 8 other people all the time. You have to be polite, you have to agree, you have to disagree, but still get through it. You have to have people that have worked really hard. I mean, I come in and the writers have worked all day on something, and if there's something that like doesn't feel right to me, you can't just say like, I don't like that at all. Like you have to be like, okay, well that one beat, that setup feels too contrived, but I like where it gets us. So what's the less contrived version of that setup, and how can we tell that story? So it's kind of just all kind of a negotiation. And then, you know, we're kind of able to do our best work from that. That's actually the next scene I want to show, transitioning it. It's funny you should ask that.